Hello folks, it's Eamon McAuley here, Belfast boxing historian, ex-pro fighter. Back with another wee story. Today I want to talk about the 10 craziest moments in boxing. Um, all these fights I'm going to talk about here I have seen on TV. I was either watching live or I've watched it back on YouTube. First one I want to talk about is Riddick Bowe against Andrew Golota, July the 11th, 1986 at Madison Square Garden. I thought Andrew Golota was sensational in this fight. He came into the fight unbeaten in 28 fights with 25 KOs. Both boxers were 28 years old. Golota took control in the fight behind a ramrod jab. Up until the 7th round, Bowe had only won one round, in my opinion. Round 2. By round 5, Bowe was looking overmatched, and an upset was becoming more and more likely for the Polish contender as the fight progressed. Bowe looked out of shape and was struggling as the fight advanced into the middle rounds. Golota had been landing punches to Bowe's midsection that were dangerously close to his belt line for much of the earlier portions of the fight, and he hit Bowe in his left thigh, getting his first warning in the second round. A second warning came after a punch from Golota hit Bowe in the crotch later in that round. Then in the third round, Golota landed another low shot to Bowe's groin. That was hard enough to send Bowe to the canvas. The ref gave Bowe 5 minutes to recover. After 3 minutes, Bowe said he was okay to continue and the fight resumed. I remember watching this fight live in my house in Ardoyne with my mates Sean and Frankie. I was seriously impressed by Golota, but couldn't understand why he was punching low, risking being disqualified when he was hammering an overweight Bowe. Bowe showed a lot of heart and didn't make a meal out of the persistent low blows, which he could have. The 7th round began with Golota continuing to press the action, but he again managed to hit Bowe low, again with a low shot. The ref stopped the action to deduct a point from Golota and warned Golota that he would disqualify him if he landed another low blow. Golota, who was clearly in front, must have lost his mind, as a few minutes later he hit Bowe with 2 low punches which sent Bowe to the canvas again. The ref disqualified the pull. Then there was mayhem in the ring as a mass brawl broke out. A guy from Bowe's team began hitting Golota over the head with his walkie-talkie, opening a cut in Golota's head that required 11 stitches. Golota's trainer Luduva, who was 74, collapsed to the canvas and he was carried out on a stretcher. We all thought he had had a heart attack. Fans of both boxers brawled outside the ring with chairs being thrown around. It was shameful and a miracle no one was killed. Eventually the police arrived. In the end, 10 arrests were made, 8 officers were injured and 9 spectators were hospitalised. Lennox Lewis against Oliver McCall. Second fight, February the 7th, 1987. And this was for the WBC heavyweight title at the Las Vegas Hilton. Lewis and McCall had previously boxed each other 2.5 years earlier. McCall knocked Lewis out in the second round in a stunning upset. Lewis called McCall lucky. Then McCall lost his WBC title to Brit Frank Bruno. The WBC scheduled a bout between Oliver McCall and Lennox Lewis for the vacant WBC title. Mike Tyson had knocked out Frank Bruno and paid Lennox Lewis $4 million to step aside so as Mike could fight Bruce Sheldon for the WBA title. Mike duly won against Sheldon by first round knockout. After Tyson beat Sheldon, he opted not to face Lewis and vacated his WBC title. Just before the fight between McAuley and Lewis was announced, McAuley was arrested on charges of vandalism, disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. He was sent to rehab in the hope that he would kick his drug addiction. McCall's promoter, Don King, insisted that McAuley would be ready to face Lewis by the time of the fight. On fight night, Lewis was able to control the first 3 rounds with his jab, while occasionally landing straight right hands. McAuley meanwhile offered very little offence and only landed 26 punches through the course of the fight. After the 3rd round ended, McAuley refused to return to his corner. Instead, he walked around the ring until the 4th round began. In the 4th, Lewis landed a right hook to McAuley's head and followed with a left right but missed. McAuley dropped his hands and backed away as he walked around the ring. Lewis attempted to provoke McAuley into fighting several times, but McAuley refused to fight back and spent the entire round walking around the ring. It was absolutely bizarre. After the round had ended, McAuley again refused to go to his corner, and I remember watching in bewilderment as McAuley was now walking around the ring with tears streaming down his face. Referee Mills Lane brought McAuley to his corner, where McAuley told his coach and referee Lane that he wanted to continue. However, in the 5th round, McAuley continued not to fight back as Lewis landed several power punches. As McAuley again turned his back, Lane stepped in between the 2 boxers and stopped the fight. After the fight, the Nevada Athletic Commission suspended McAuley and withheld his £3 million purse. And by early April, he was deemed mentally ill and he was sent to a Virginia psychiatric ward. Eventually, he was able to collect his £3 million purse, but he was fined $250,000. Bizarre. These are in no particular order, by the way. Holyfield Tyson 2 at the MGM Las Vegas, June the 28th, 1987. Holyfield and Tyson had boxed 7 months earlier, as Holyfield pulled out of a stunning upset, stopping Tyson in 11 rounds. Going into that first fight, Tyson was a strong favourite as he seemed to be back to his best, while Holyfield had struggled in previous fights, getting knocked out by Riddick Bowe and struggling against Ray Mercer and Bobby Chase. But Holyfield was inspired against Tyson, and I remember watching this fight with my mate Brendan Motoll and my father as Karen and my son slept upstairs in my house. What I remember about the first fight, and I will never forget, is Holyfield's corner weren't giving them instructions on how to attack or how to defend. They were simply saying to Evander, who's a Christian, concentrate on Jesus. And Evander would sit in the stool and close his eyes and take deep breaths while concentrating on Jesus. And he pulled off one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. In the rematch, Mike Tyson's team objected to the referee Mitch Halpin, as they thought Holyfield was careless with the head in the first fight, and Halpin ruled them all accidental headbutts. Mills Lane was brought in as a replacement. In the fight, Holyfield won the first 3 rounds. In the second round, Holyfield ducked under a right from Tyson. In doing so, he headbutted Tyson, producing a large cut over Tyson's eye. Tyson had repeatedly complained about headbutting in the first fight. Mills Lane stated that the headbutts were unintentional and non-punishable. As the third round began, Tyson came out of his corner without his gum shield. Lane noticed this and ordered Tyson back to his corner to insert the gum shield. In my opinion, Tyson had it in his mind what he was going to do. The devil was in his head. Tyson began the third with a furious assault. With 40 seconds remaining in the round, Holyfield got Tyson in a clinch. And as Tyson rolled his head above Evander's shoulder, he bit Holyfield on the right ear. A chunk of Holyfield's ear was then spat onto the canvas from Tyson's mouth. Holyfield leapt into the air in pain and spun in a circle, bleeding profusely from the bite wound. But Tyson rushed Evander from behind and shoved him into his corner. Referee Mills Lane temporarily lost his mind, only warning Tyson and deducting him 2 points, as a piece of Evander's ear lay on the canvas. Dr. Hamansky cleared Holyfield to box on, and as they got into a clinch seconds after Lane ordered them to box on, Tyson again bit Holyfield's ear. Referee Lane didn't notice the bite, and the bell rang to end the round. When the second bite was discovered, the fight was ended. Tyson went on a rampage after the fight, trying to attack Holyfield in his corner. When Holyfield got interviewed later, he said rightly, Tyson bit him because he knew he was going to get knocked out, and he chose to get disqualified instead. As Tyson left the arena, a fan threw a bottle of water at him, and Tyson went after him. Tyson also made obscene gestures to the crowd. These were the actions of a madman. If Tyson had a bit part of someone's ear off in the street, he would have got between 5 and 7 years in jail. It was horrific, and there's absolutely no justification for what he done. It was barbaric. He should have at least been banned from boxing for life. But he wasn't. Money talks. Tony Wilson represented Great Britain at the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984. Wilson also won the British professional title in December 1987, stopping Blaine Logsdon on a cut in round 6. Wilson also won the Lonsdale belt outright by making 2 defences, beating Brian Shoemaker in his first and second defence. I knew these guys from my stay at Crystal Palace before the 84 Summer Olympics, when I was there sparring featherweight representative Kevin Taylor and lightweight rep Alex Dixon. Shoemaker was the middleweight rep and Tony Wilson was the light heavyweight representative. In September 1989, Wilson beat Steve McCarthy in controversial circumstances. McCarthy knocked Wilson down in the third round, and looking to finish the fight, McCarthy was pounding Wilson on the ropes when, completely out of the blue, Tony Wilson's large mum suddenly appeared on the ring apron, and she started to hit McCarthy over the head with her stiletto heel. Wilson's cornerman entered the ring, and McCarthy believed he had won, and he quickly left the ring. Referee Adrian Morgan insisted the fight should continue, but McCarthy refused from his dressing room. The injuries to McCarthy's head needed 4 stitches. A row ensued as Wilson's hand was raised by the ref. Wilson's 62-year-old mother had to be dragged from the ring by the hair by a security guard. Incidentally, Tony Wilson lost to my good friend Noel McGee, but Noel's from Ardown, where I'm from, but Wilson lost 7 out of his last 8 fights. On March 1987, coach Teddy Atlas, fighter Michael Moore was boxing Vaughan Bean for the World Heavyweight title. Moore was sluggish and lethargic, and as he returned to his corner at the end of round 8, Atlas was furious and pulled out his cell phone from his pocket and dialed Michael Moore's son. He then put the phone up to Moore's ear and said, "It's your son and he's crying. Tell him why you don't want to be the heavyweight champion no more." On another occasion, Atlas warned his fighter, this was a different fighter, that if he had another bad round like the last round, then he wouldn't be in his corner when he came back. The next round, Atlas' fighter walked towards his corner, but Atlas was gone. Atlas was in Barney Eastwood's gym in Belfast for Barry McGuigan's world title defence against Daniel Cabrera in Dublin, 1986. In fact, February 1986 to be specific. I boxed for Barney at this time and watched Atlas work with Barry for 3.5 weeks. The knockout of the year in 1985 was Vince Petway knocking out Simon Brown. Simon Brown was one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world at the time, and he held major titles at welterweight and light middleweight, and he beat some good boxers like Tyrone Trice, Terry Norris, unbeaten Olympian Sean O'Sullivan, Morris Blocker and Marlon Starling, among others. Brown lost in a rematch with Norris, and after a couple of fights, Brown boxed Vince Petway, who had only 4 losses in 42 fights. This was a crazy back and forth fight that saw both men get dropped entering round 6. Then a shocking outcome happened. Petway walloped Brown with a perfect left hook that sent Brown down so hard that Brown kept throwing punches in the air while unconscious. I couldn't believe it as I sat and watched it. The fight between Paul Samuels from Wales and Salo Renda in 2009 resulted in a rare double knockdown. The 2 middleweights landed simultaneously. The fight was on the undercard of Lovemore Indu against Matthew Hatton. This rarely happens in boxing, and it happened in the second round. Renda got up first, while Samuels initially stayed down. They boxed again 3 months later, and it was another classic. Welshman Samuels won both fights. Incidentally, in 1985, I watched another double knockdown in an IBF cruiserweight title fight. Leroy Murphy against Crisanda Moody. On June the 20th, 1980, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, Roberto Duran, stepped up to welterweight and took the WBC world title of Sugar Ray Leonard in a thrilling fight. Duran partied for months and put on quite a bit of weight and accepted a rematch with Leonard in New Orleans on November the 25th, some 4 months after the first fight. In the first fight, Duran had made Leonard so mad with his antics before the fight that Leonard forgot the boxing move and stood toe-to-toe with Duran, which played right into Duran's hands. In the rematch, Leonard boxed and moved this time, and a bloated Duran started to get frustrated as Leonard was dancing rings around him. In the 8th round, Duran, who had 1 defeat, avenged twice, and 72 wins, turned and walked to his corner while waving his hands in the air. He had quit. No one could believe it. Duran quit. Leonard never got the credit he was due, as it was all about Duran, saying no mas, no more. But as Leonard rightly said, it was me that made him quit. Riddick Bowe versus Evander Holyfield 2. The Fan Man. The first fight between these 2 heavyweights was an absolute classic. Holyfield's courage was inspiring, and the trade paper Boxing News had on the front cover a photo of both warriors slugging it out with the headline, "A World Fit for Heroes." The fight was November the 13th, 1992. In the second fight, Bo came in 40 pounds heavier than he weighed for the first fight. Bo started strong, winning the first 3 rounds, and Holyfield stormed back to take rounds 4, 5 and 6. In the 7th round, after a vicious exchange, the fight was stopped when James Miller crashed into the ring with his powered paraglider, causing a 21-minute delay. Everybody thought it was a terrorist attack, and once again I remember watching this live. I was dumbstruck. Miller was beat viciously by ringsiders who beat Miller over the head with their mobile phones. If you remember, they were big chunky things in them days. Eventually the fight resumed, and it was nip and tuck all the way to the finish, as both men fell to the canvas at the final bell. Like the previous fight, it would go to the judges, and Holyfield got the nod on a majority decision. The Fan Man incident was named Event of the Year by the Ring magazine. James Miller went missing in 2002 and was found having hanged himself in 2003, a year after being diagnosed with coronary artery disease. He was in a lot of debt at the time of his death. God rest his soul. Resto vs. Collins, 1983. A journeyman boxer all his life, Resto was convicted in 1986 and jailed for 2.5 years for assault, criminal possession of a weapon and conspiracy. Both a State Boxing Commission investigation and a criminal investigation found that Resto's cornerman had illegally altered Resto's gloves by removing the padding and soaking his hand wraps in plaster in a boxing match against unbeaten 14-0 Billy Collins Jr. In the ensuing fight, Collins suffered a torn iris and permanently blurred vision, ending his career. Collins died the following year in a car crash. Collins had hit the drink after the loss as he went off the rails, and he was estranged from his wife, and there was talk of domestic abuse. This really was a tragic story, and Luis Resto and his coach Panama Luis got jailed and spent a few years in jail. For almost a quarter of a century, Resto publicly denied knowing that Luis had tampered with his gloves. However, in 2007, Resto apologised to Collins' widow. Resto also told her that in addition to removing padding from the gloves, Panama Luis soaked his hand wraps in plaster of Paris. This caused the wraps to harden into plaster casts, similar to those used to set broken bones. Really was horrific. Resto confessed that he knew Luis had taken the padding out of his gloves and had done so at least twice before. This was all featured in the programme Assault in the Ring, which is on YouTube. I seriously suggest you give it a watch. It's thrilling, it's incredible, and very, very sad and tragic. Resto also visited Collins' gravesite in the programme and said, "I'm sorry for what I did to you." The Resto Collins fight was on the Roberto Duran Davy Muir card and was televised. Resto cried the whole way through the programme, but I wasn't convinced that he was showing abject and true remorse. To be honest with you, I thought he was a phony. And then the story of the boxer who shit in the ring. Oh, sorry, that was Crufts. It was a boxer dog. Sorry, I got that wrong. Okay, folks, thanks for listening to me. Take care, God bless, and maybe I'll see you soon, maybe I won't. Bye.